You
I
lied.
lied about all of that.
I saw 46 slides and we were only halfway through at 10:30.
Yeah, I told a big fat story. Yeah, oh, I wasn't ready for that. Okay, compatibility testing is determining if the blood that you give your patient is gonna be compatible. Okay, so first I wanna talk about the history of blood transfusion. It started in 1628. So a really, really long time ago. The history of blood transfusion is really interesting, I think. So William Harvey discovered that the blood circulated in the body in 1628, which in my mind, that's like medieval times. I don't know, that's a long, long time ago. So they used animal blood at first, and later human blood. So they used a quill or like a metal thing, and to put it into the, I don't know, into the body somehow, and that's how they got the blood in, which was really weird. A bunch of the early recipients died because they didn't have any idea about the ABO blood group system. They didn't know anything, and so they're just giving people animal blood and they're dying. They knew nothing. So around 1900, the ABO blood group system was discovered by who? Who discovered it? Lance Steiner. Lance Steiner. So the more about the history is on page 226 in your book. It is interesting if you want to read about it. It is.
So they were just giving random people some
They were experimenting. They didn't know anything.
Yeah, but they got, you're giving squirrel blood, people
Yeah.
die.
So I think they probably use like pigs and stuff. I read it somewhere, I don't remember, but it didn't always work. Sheep, maybe they did sheep. Anyway, compatibility testing involves all the steps in the identification and testing of a donor unit and the recipient's blood. Cross-matching is part of the compatibility testing and involves mixing the donor red cells with the patient's serum or plasma.
I just got that right.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
I know. We'll do it again. Okay, so no agglutination or hemolysis. So remember, hemolysis is also a positive reaction. Indicates that it is compatible. And even if everything looks like it's compatible, it doesn't mean that there's not gonna be a problem, because there can always be a problem. But we're doing the best we can to decide if it's hopefully gonna be fine. Agglutination or hemolysis means that it is incompatible. So this is a bad picture, but I wanted you to see the segments. So this is how you get the donor cells off of a unit of blood, because once you enter a unit of blood, it's only good for 24 hours after you break the seal. So they have all these little, it's called segments. And so the blood, if you've ever donated blood, it's a long tube. So when they send it, I guess it's like a tube, like a tail. And at the donor center, after they do all the testing, and they'll take that long string of tubing that has blood in it and kind of clamp it off with a heat sealer. And it makes it where you can pinch off one of those segments, and there's little piercing devices. So those little blood bank tubes that we use, you'll see the piercing devices at your clinic. So it's a little green, usually green, plastic thing that fits right inside your tube, and it has a lip that comes up around the edge of it, and there's a needle in there, so the little lip thing is so you don't poke yourself. And you'll take that segment and you just poke it down in there, and the blood comes out of the bottom of that little segment piercing device and squirts into the tube, and then you make your red cell suspension from that. And so that's how you use the donor cells without entering the unit of blood. And so you'll mix that 1 drop of your suspension with 2 drops of your patient's plasma, spin it down, and look for agglutination. So the purpose of cross-matching, the immediate spin cross-match is just to look for ABO errors. Because remember, you're not gonna see clinically significant antibodies at immediate spin. They're IgG, you have to incubate them and go through AHG. So immediate spin is just looking for, is it the wrong blood type? The full cross-match, or the extended cross-match, or there's several different names for it. That's how you look for antibodies. So according to AABB, The cross-matching shall use methods that demonstrate ABO incompatibility and clinically significant antibodies to red cell antigens, and shall include the antiglobulin phase, because that's the only way you're gonna see those clinically significant antibodies, other than ABO. I had to have been using this chapter when I made that conclusion. So one thing that you'll need to know, the two components of the major cross-match. I'm gonna abbreviate cross-match as XM, that's what we do in the blood bank. That means cross-match. It's donor red cells and recipient's plasma. Okay, serologic cross-matching. So this stands for immediate spin. So immediate spin is also called abbreviated. Or immediate spin. So immediate spin cross-matching is performed when the recipient has no evidence of an antibody. So in their current sample, or ever in the history of their blood banking work that they've had done at your facility. So that's the only time you can do an immediate spin cross-match. If they have their antibody screen's negative today, and they never had an antibody ever at your facility, ever. So even if their antibody screen's negative today, it doesn't mean that they don't have a history of an antibody. Which means if you give them blood, even if their antibody's not showing up today, if you give them blood that has the antigen for which they had an antibody for 10 years ago, they're still gonna have a transfusion reaction. So these are the only people that can get an immediate spin cross-match. And so you'll mix the recipient serum